Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Authentic Mom Workshop. I'm so glad that you found your way to this video today. I'm Laura from Child Reach Center, and I am thrilled to be here introducing Chelsea Hicks Webster. We are working in partnership to bring you her content for the Authentic Mom Workshop and for any future Q&As that you might have questions for that we can be answering together. Chelsea is here from Creating Me, and she's going to provide more of an introduction to herself in a little bit, as well as to the workshop. So without further ado, I will hand this over to Chelsea.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Laura. All right, because I'm going to be doing most of the talking, sorry, not sorry, I'm going to move this over a little bit, give Laura a chance to say goodbye. Laura is amazing. She's going to be with us for any of the Q&As that you choose to join to help you sort of apply this content afterwards. So you'll definitely be seeing more from Laura. But for today, I look forward to spending the next hour with you. I'm just going to switch over my audio, so bear with me 1 second. Right, beauty. So as Laura mentioned, my name is Chelsea, and I am a life coach. And I'm going to tell you a bit more about what that means in a minute. But first, let me tell you what we're going to be doing together today. This workshop it's called Authentic Mom, but we're going to be talking a lot about stress. And that's because stress, I think, is one of the most useful tools that we have at our disposal for figuring out what our needs are, what our desires are that are maybe not being met right now, and figuring out how to meet those, how to be in alignment with our own needs, our own values, and the life that we want. So I'm going to be talking to you about how stress can be really useful in terms of being more authentic, being the person you want to be, creating the life you want to live. I'm also going to talk to you about some of the ways that people commonly handle stress, because that's how we're taught to handle stress, which do not actually produce those positive outcomes and can actually be kind of painful and produce some negative outcomes for your life. So we're going to explore that together today. And most importantly, because I want this content to be so actionable and so simple for you to apply, there is a worksheet that you can download from the webpage that you are on where you're watching this video. It's got only 6 questions, and it is going to help you apply the authentic stress response, which is what we're going to learn today. And in this video, we're going to walk you step by step through that worksheet using 3 different examples that are really common in mom life. One example will be when your source of stress is an overwhelming schedule. How can you process through that really effectively to slow down and get your schedule looking the way you want it to? Another example might be when you're frustrated with your child because they're just not listening. What can you do with that knee-jerk frustration that allows you to work through it and deal with your child in the way that you truly want to, and that gets you the results that you want? And then we'll use a third example of how this authentic stress response exercise can be applied when maybe you're feeling very frustrated with your partner, maybe around their parenting choices. So lots of great content here, and so excited for you to be here joining us today. So let's dive in. Oh, look, I touched on a lot of this on the title slide. So we'll just skim over it quickly here. The order of operations for today is we're going to talk about very common ways that people cope with stress. You may see yourself in some of these. How to cope with stress in order to make it a superpower for your life, that authentic stress response. We're also going to talk about barriers. Because the truth is, if it was really easy to just respond to stress and solve the problem and move on and have a great life, we would all do it, no problem. But there's some very common barriers that hold us back from doing that. And I'm going to tell you what those are and what to do about them. And then we're going to go through some examples. And I've put one example at the sort of the front, and then save the other 2 examples for at the end. The examples, in my opinion, are like the funnest part of the content. So I would encourage you to listen to all the way to the end. But if you just want to listen to the core content and then peel off before the additional examples, because let's be honest, time is scarce, that's beautiful too. And we'll also talk just a little bit, because I get a lot of questions about this, about how to apply the tools you're going to use today to your little people, to your kids. Because while moms experience a lot of stress, and I'm talking about all negative emotions when I say stress, I'm talking about overwhelm, anxiety, frustration, insecurity, all those stuff that weigh heavily on us. Our little people have that too, right? And they're not even as good at us at dealing with it. So I'm going to offer you some tips for applying what you've learned today to your little people. And what I want to offer before we get started is just a really, I think, useful way of thinking about the work we're going to do together today. Learning the skill of authentic stress response, which is what today is all about, is like a workout for your mind. The more you practice, the stronger your mind will become. It's a lot like, I want you to think about if you were lifting weights. If you went to the gym one day and you like did some bicep curls, you might look in the mirror and think, why do my biceps not look huge? Like, why am I not ripped? And that's because your muscles need repetition in order to get really strong. So does your brain. When you are training your brain to behave in a new way, it takes practice before that skill will become really good and really strong for you. So the worksheet I'm going to offer you today, you're going to apply it and practice it today, but it will be something that I'm encouraging you to apply regularly, like weekly or every time you have a major stressor, in order to get really good at it. Which, of course, begs the question of why? Why practice? Like, why does this skill even matter? Because let's be honest, you've got a lot on your plate, and I know your time is scarce. So why would I encourage you to invest your time in practicing this skill? And the truth is, because I think this skill is everything. And I don't say that lightly. I actually have a very hard time taking a firm stance on pretty much anything except for this. I believe the skill of authentic stress response is like the foundational skill that will help you with any other goal in your life. It will help you feel happier because you will have a concrete way for releasing your stress and moving forward. It will help you be more of yourself and be that way with confidence, because you'll be constantly holding space to ask, what do I need? What do I want? How can I get there? You will have less emotional roller coaster in your life. Because right now, if you feel like you're experiencing a lot of emotional ups and downs, like your stress really ebbs and flows with your kids' behavior or your partner's words or what happens at work, it can feel really out of control, right? Like you just don't know how you're going to feel because you don't know what's going to happen out there. And that's a scary thing. But when you learn the skill of processing your stress authentically, you take back the power of your own emotions and you learn to regulate that so the stuff out there no longer controls you. It also is really amazing for helping you improve your relationships with your partner, with your children, with your boss. Like, this was huge for me. I got into this because I was feeling a lot of stress and anxiety, particularly at work. And the way I was responding to that was a lot of crying, and it was eroding my relationship with my boss. Maybe you have similar things in your life where this can really improve your relationships. And also, once you master this skill of authentic stress response for yourself, you can offer it to your children. And that is everything. It will give them the tools to work through big emotions and the confidence to be themselves. So, just so you know a little bit about me before we get started, we won't spend a lot of time here, but this is actually a second career for me, life coaching. I started my career, I did a master's in environmental science, and then I spent a decade working in research at Western University. And then I had babies, and that was really hard. Um, Truthfully, the stress that I experienced, particularly after my twin boys were born and I had 3 babies under 2, it crippled me. I was so overwhelmed most of the time that I literally couldn't even think. It was like many days I just had brain fog that was impenetrable. And I had so much anxiety around whether or not I was enough in my parenting, enough in my job, that I was fragile. And I cried a lot. And a lot of times that meant crying in my boss's office, which really just didn't help things. And that point was so low for me that I actually reached out for support and got the help of a life coach. And it was everything. That coaching, which is really boils down to the tools I'm going to teach you today, helped me find my feet in motherhood and motivated me to change careers. I went back to school. I became a certified life coach and parent educator. And now I do teaching. I teach with organizations like this workshop with Child Reach. And I also do a lot of one-on-one work with clients to help them apply this work in their own lives. And the first time I ever offered this course, I got to the end, and the very first question someone asked was, what is life coaching anyways? What does that even mean? So let me just really quickly tell you a little bit about life coaching, what it is, and how it differs from therapy, which you might be familiar with. Life coaching is really about setting a goal and achieving it. Not so different from goal-oriented therapy, but really focused on how to take you from stable but kind of struggling to really thriving. And the way coaching does that is it helps you set the goal to begin with. What is that? Like, do you want to slow down and get more organized? Do you want a more connected relationship with your partner or your kids? Do you want to cry less in front of your boss? Do you want to eat better? So we clarify that goal that's really important to you. We create an action plan for what you would need to do to get there. And then you take sustained action until you get it. That's really important. Really, really important, because without action, things don't change. And really, the sweet spot of life coaching, it can help you come up with that goal and action plan. But then as you start moving towards your goal, you will for sure encounter hurdles. That's why you haven't achieved your goal already, is because there's things that make it difficult. And each time one of those hurdles crop up, I help my clients work through that. And so at the end of the day, it's about achieving your goal, but even more so, like my favorite part of this whole process, it's about growing as a person and becoming the person with the skills to achieve that goal. And those skills never go away, right? Once you grow yourself, that's there forever. And the actual process of life coaching can look different ways. It can be as simple as starting with a free coffee chat. And I would encourage any of you, if you have questions after this video is over, to reach out for a free coffee chat or join one of the Q&As on the website. But the coffee chat is a great chance to really explore a particular challenge you're struggling with, clarify the goal you're trying to achieve, and create that action plan. That on its own, that free, like no commitment call, is super useful coaching. Then you can either go forward and run with that action plan on your own, or you could bring me along with you and I could support you as you take those actions. And that support is really simple. It's like getting together once a week, either on Zoom, or we can walk. If you live in the London and Dorchester area, I started offering walking sessions, which are really fun. And it's just a chance to say, are you progressing forward? What's in your way? How can we scale those hurdles together? And if you think about therapy and life coaching, I like this Venn diagram because it really shows the relationship nicely. Therapists do amazing work with people who are not functioning. Like if you have severe depression and it's really hard to even get out of bed, that needs a registered therapist. If you have obsessive compulsive disorder and you're really struggling with ruminations or compulsive behaviors, a beautiful thing to get the support of a therapist on. But if you're generally functioning in your life, but you're just not thriving, there's some pain points and it's hard, and you really know that life could be better, life coaching is a really beautiful support for that. And there is some overlap. There are some therapists who do really great work on, you know, on helping you thrive, but really that's where coaching kind of lands. Okay, so let's dive in to the core content, which is all about stress and how to make it valuable, useful to your life. So I love this analogy of stress being like a smoke detector. So in your house, you're cooking your frozen pizza in the oven, and all of a sudden your smoke detector starts going off, right? It's like, meh, meh, meh. Your smoke detector is giving you very useful information. It is saying, fix this smoke. There is smoke in the kitchen. Your pizza is burning. You need to deal with that. Your stress, and again, stress I'm using very as a general term for like anxiety, overwhelm, anger, frustration, insecurity, all of that, all of your negative emotions are a bit like your internal smoke detector. And they go off when they're saying, you might want to fix this thing in your life. Something isn't working the way you want it to. And when you get really good at noticing your internal smoke detector and responding to it authentically, good things happen. But there are also some other ways of responding to stress that turn it into something that is not such a great experience. Sorry, I'm doing too much talking. All right. So we're going to talk about what those other ways are. And you might see some of these tendencies in yourself. And there's no shame in that because we're not taught to honor our stress and respond authentically. So you wouldn't know how to do that. You may also see some of these tendencies in others. But the first stress response that is maybe not so useful is called avoiding. And in real life, what avoiding stress looks like is just kind of pretending it's not there. And you know you're avoiding stress if you feel stressed most of the time, but you find yourself saying, I'm fine. I'm fine. It's no big deal. Other people have it worse. It's fine. But inside, it doesn't actually feel fine. You're avoiding it. You're pretending it's not there. And if you go back to our analogy of the smoke detector, it's a little bit like hearing your smoke detector going off, but you just keep prepping the salad in the kitchen. You keep chopping the lettuce and you just pretend it's not going off, right? That doesn't solve the problem. Okay. So avoiding, that's number one. The second way that people commonly respond to stress is called buffering. And buffering is when we look for a way to take our mind off of the stress we're feeling. In real life, that can look like having a drink after work to take the edge off. That used to be my favorite buffer of choice, crack a Bombay soda. It can look like smoking. It can look like shopping when you don't actually need anything, but it feels good to give you something fun to do instead. It can look like scrolling social media to take your mind off things, being lost in your phone. And all of those things, they feel good for the moment. But then when you come back to reality, the smoke detector is still going off, right? And it's a little bit like in our analogy of the burning pizza, it's a little bit like hearing the smoke detector, but then deciding to go for a walk instead. You go for a walk and you're like, this is great. I don't hear the smoke detector, like no problem. But then you come home and you're like, oh, yeah, the smoke detector is still going off. The pizza is still burning. The third common way for people to respond to stress is by reacting. And this one's tricky because it can feel really good and purposeful in the moment, but it doesn't actually usually work out that well in the end. Reacting can look like having a big external reaction or behavior that matches the internal feeling. So it might look like yelling when you're frustrated or crying in your boss's office. All of these things are totally normal to experience, but usually don't get us where we want. And it's a little bit like, if we go back to the smoke detector, it's kind of like hearing that smoke detector go off and then feeling panicked and just running around the house in panic. Like nobody would criticize you for feeling panicked, but it's not going to get you the result that you want most of the time. Okay, so all three of these, avoiding, buffering, and reacting, so normal, but they don't turn stress into a superpower. They usually create some negative side effects for you, like eroding your relationships if you're having big reactions, feeling hungover the next day, spending a little too much money if you're buffering, and they don't get to the root of the issue. So the question is, what can you do instead? That is what the rest of today is going to focus on, is what is the alternative to these? And the alternative is stress response number 4, which is to respond authentically. And in real life, what that looks like is noticing that you're feeling stressed and asking yourself, why do I feel that way? What is not working the way I want it to? What is the need that's not being met here for myself? And how can I achieve that? How can I get what I'm needing and wanting in this situation? And then going forward and doing that. And it's kind of the equivalent of hearing the smoke detector, seeing the smoke, and realizing, oh, my pizza's burning in the oven. Let me take it out. Let me open the windows and clear this smoke out, and then moving forward. And when you can do this, when you can respond authentically to your stress over and over and over again, it turns your stress into a superpower. It helps you quickly identify when something is not working how you want. So you can tweak things so your life becomes more of the life you want, and you become more of the person you want to be, and you become happier because you're able to let that stress go more quickly. So that's kind of the overview of where we're going and why. And we're going to spend the rest of our time together really delving in to the nuances of how the heck to do this. Like what is the simple way that rubber hits the road on authentic stress response? Authentic stress response really boils down to just, not 4, 3 steps. Step number 1 is to notice how you're feeling. And this might sound obvious, but it's actually really not. Because I will tell you, when I was at my low point, I spent over 6 months in like pretty constant and intense anxiety, and I literally didn't know what it was. I kind of just thought that I was broken. That was what I would tell my husband when he would say, like, what's wrong? All I could say back to him was, I don't know. I just feel broken. And so noticing just means realizing, oh, I am having a negative emotion. I'm having some stress. Let me do something about it. And that can happen very quickly. It doesn't have to take 6 months. Once you notice that your internal smoke detector is going off, step 2 is to understand the helpful message that's beneath that stress. And then step 3 is to respond authentically, which will really help you decide, okay, how do I want to move forward to create the result I'm looking for in this situation? And I'm going to offer you an exercise to apply this, but there is one more thing you really need to know in order to apply this effectively. And that is what I'm going to call the model. Now, the model is these 5 components that you see on your screen, and I'm going to walk you through each of them. And this model is applicable to absolutely any situation in your life. Any situation can be broken down into these 5 components. The first component is your circumstance. Your circumstance are the facts of the situation. And these are things you could prove in court. Everybody sees them the same way. They are very factual. So for example, if you had an exchange with your child, that might be the child's words, the words that the child used to you, or how many times your child walked down the stairs and came out of the room at bedtime. Those are the facts. The next piece of this model is your thoughts. Your thoughts are these sentences in your mind by which you interpret the facts. And your thoughts, my friend, are everything. So, so important, because those facts out there are neither good nor bad until you have thoughts about them. And so if your child comes down the stairs at bedtime, the fact is she came downstairs after I tucked her in. And if your thought was, she never listens, she's always pushing my buttons at bedtime, you might feel really angry. But if your thought is, oh, my child wanted to talk to me, she's looking for connection, you might feel empathetic. So those thoughts are everything in terms of creating your feelings. So again, feeling frustrated with the child or feeling empathetic, shaped by those sentences in your mind. And feelings are really interesting because we all know we have them, but what is a feeling actually? A feeling is actually a physical sensation in your body that can be described in one word: happy, angry, joyful, excited, sad, right? All of these, if you pay attention, actually manifest physically in your body. And we're going to talk about what that looks like so you can get really good at noticing when you're having a feeling. Now, your feelings matter, partly because they directly determine aspects of your quality of life, right? If you're sad all the time or anxious all the time, kind of sucks. But also because your feelings drive your actions. When you are happy, you behave in a certain way. When you are angry, you act in a very different way. And at the end, the sum of all of your actions determines the results you get in your life. Okay, so now the question is, what does this have to do with responding to stress authentically? I will show you. Let's remember, step 1 of authentic stress response is to notice that you're feeling stressed. And so we're going to think about feelings. Remember how I told you your feelings are actually a physical sensation in your body? They are the easiest part of this model to notice, right? Like, you know, when your brain is just completely foggy because you're totally overwhelmed. And you know when your chest is like feeling like it's got so much pressure that it might explode because you're so angry. We can notice these things. And so we're going to practice noticing them so we can respond more quickly. Now, because we're all here to work through stress, we're going to talk a lot about how the negative emotions feel in your body. But the truth is, this applies to your positive emotions too. Like, when I feel intense joy, my body feels so light. And in my face, it literally feels like I can almost feel beams of light radiating out from my face when my joy is really intense. And it's very cool. So you can do this for anything. Okay, so that covers step 1. We just notice that feeling in our body and remember that it's saying, hey, there's something here for you to look at. Something might not be working the way you want. Step 2 is to understand the helpful message within that feeling or beneath that feeling. And to do that, we need to look at our thoughts. We need to be very intentional about asking, what am I thinking that's causing this feeling? And thoughts are so interesting. You're going to see this in really concrete terms in just a second, but we will have lots of thoughts about lots of things. And they are not all true. There are portions of our thoughts that are often true, but typically our thoughts will dramatize a reality. And so, for example, if your daughter has come down the stairs for the third time at bedtime and you're thinking, she's always pushing my buttons, that is probably not true. But what is true is there might be something missing in your bedtime routine that will make it run more smoothly for you and for her, something to be addressed. Okay, so we're going to look at the thoughts and we're going to ask, how is this thought true? How is it not true? And how is it serving me to think this way? How is it not serving me to think this way? And remember how I said thoughts are often, not always, but often, they dramatize an actual fact or reality? I love this analogy of making mountains out of molehills. Now, for those of you who've never heard that before, a mountain is obviously like a huge, or protrusion from the ground, a giant hill. And a molehill is also like a lump, but it's a lot smaller, right? It's just a little mound of dirt. And so often, the thoughts that are causing our stress take a legitimate molehill, but they turn it into a mountain because like we want that to happen. We want to have a dramatic thought that causes a feeling of stress so we will notice. Because imagine your smoke detector. Let's go back there for a minute. If your smoke detector in your kitchen, when there was a fire, if it was like, hey, there's some smoke, you might want to look at it. You might not hear it. You might ignore it. Like it wouldn't draw your attention in a compelling way. But your smoke detector is like, meh, 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 because it wants you to notice. So this is a good thing. We just need to notice and then find a little piece of truth that we can respond to. So here's a couple examples. One thought, one sentence you might have in your mind that is a bit like a mountain, that exaggerated version of reality, might be, my partner treats me like a doormat. This is something I hear quite often from my clients. And the molehill beneath that, the piece of truth for them is usually something like, I really would like more help with the household chores. Another thought that is a bit like a mountain is the thought, I am failing, right? So many of us have this thought, I'm failing, I'm not good enough. And that feels big. And there might not, well, that is most definitely not true. You are not failing at all of the things. You are not a failure. There is probably 90% of the things in your life that you're actually doing really well. But there still might be a piece of truth beneath that, which is there's actually this one thing that I would like to improve on. That's the molehill. Another mountain might be, my child is such a jerk when they're angry. And the molehill, the truth beneath that might be, my child needs help with emotional regulation. And then a last example would be, there's not enough time in a day. That might be a sentence you have in your mind about your own time. And that's not true. But the truth beneath that is, I am a little busier than I would like to be. I would like to slow down. And the reason it's really important to remember not to take those mountains, those thoughts at face value, because they're going to create a lot of stress that makes it hard for you to think clearly, hard for you to act strategically. And they're not fully true. They're not as actionable. If you look at the molehills and you get really good at finding the pieces of truth in your stress, those are usually very actionable, like asking for more help with chores, working on that one thing about yourself that you'd like to improve on, finding strategies to help your child regulate their emotions, right? These are all things that you can do something about. Okay, so that covers step 2, where we seek to understand the useful message in the stress so that we can go on to step 3, where we respond authentically. And this is so simple, my friends, so simple. All you need to do is ask yourself, What is the result that I want in this situation? And what action could I achieve to get that result? Or what action could I take to achieve that result? That's it. And that identifies how you're going to move forward. And as soon as you have done that, as soon as you have acknowledged what needs changing and created a plan to do it, your stress will whoosh, it will drop dramatically. That smoke detector will go off because it knows the burning pizza is being dealt with. So, like I said, this workshop is all about action. I want you to be able to leave today and take this and be able to apply it regularly, to do those mental repetitions for yourself and get really good at this. And so we are going to walk step by step through the worksheet for this program that you can download from the Child Reach website. And I'm going to show you step-by-step examples of how to respond to all of these questions so that you will know exactly how to do it for yourself. We are going to do one example together now on how to use this if you're feeling overwhelmed by your schedule. And then I'm going to cover a few other core things, like how to overcome the challenges that you're going to bump into as you do this. At the very end, if you want to keep listening, because the examples are the juiciest, funnest part, you'll also find 2 other examples showing how to use this worksheet if your kids are not listening and you're frustrated about their behavior, or if you're frustrated with something your partner is doing, like how they're approaching parenting. One thing that's really, really important to flag is that you should absolutely not use this worksheet to process your own trauma. And so things that can be very traumatic for people are any sort of violence and abuse, childhood neglect, like any really, really significant things that have left you with intense emotions around those things. Those are best dealt with a therapist. They will walk you through a process that might have a lot of similarities to this, but I do not want you to try and do that on your own. It's really unsafe because when you open the box and start thinking about those experiences, you can have a really sudden onset of strong emotion that's very difficult to control and is just much more supportively done with professional help. And on the worksheet that you can download, I've actually included contact information for 2 organizations in the London Middlesex area who offer therapy and counseling, and sometimes offer it at subsidized rates for people who are maybe on a limited budget, on ODSP. So check that out for use with trauma. But for everybody else who is working on the sort of regular annoyances and frustrations of day-to-day motherhood, this is gold, and let's get going. Oh, right. I did. I wanted to say one more thing. When I first started teaching this workshop, I got some questions around when should I do this? Like, am I supposed to pull out a worksheet when I'm having a fight with my kid and say, like, just stop, mama needs 15 minutes to work through this? No. In those moments, you just manage them the best that you can, and that is fine and beautiful. And afterwards, you will pull out this worksheet to work through it. You will know, oh, I felt really stressed. I didn't respond to that how I wanted. And you're going to use this to work through it in kind of a post-mortem kind of way. It'll take you 15 to 20 minutes. So hold space for that. And as I mentioned, mental repetition matters. I would suggest you try doing this like a couple times a week, or anytime you notice that your stress is particularly high, do this. My husband actually has gotten really good. If he notices that I'm like pretty spun, he'll be like, Chelsea, like, do you need to take some time to go upstairs and coach yourself? And I use this same thing on my own self all the time. And so quite often I'm like, yeah, I totally do. And so I will step aside and use this. I've also had people tell me they like using it before they go to bed at night because if you are someone who has trouble sleeping because you're feeling anxious and your brain just won't shut off, this can be a really great way to sort of clear out all that mental clutter and come to closure and peace before bedtime. And what you will notice is that the more you practice this after the fact, you will notice starting that you'll have changes that happen in real time. Like if you think about that thing you're frustrated with around your kid, if you have found an authentic way to respond to it through this analysis, then the more you practice, the more that new response will become just so automatic for you that it will happen without as much effort in the moment. You'll also be able to more quickly apply this to new situations that you've never analyzed after the fact. You'll get good at asking yourself, oh, like I feel stressed. What is it that I need right now? What is it that I'm trying to achieve right now? How can I get it? And you can do that internally on the fly. But for now, postmortem. Okay, so let's dive into this exercise. The very first question is just like I call it a thought download, but it's your chance to free write about whatever situation is causing your stress. And we're just going to pick one. Like you might have several different things that aren't quite working how you want right now. We're going to just pick one and free write about it. And so just get it all out of your head. Don't judge yourself. Why is this situation hard? And don't judge yourself at all. So in the case of an overwhelming schedule, that might look like your thought download might look like there is always so much to do. I feel like I never get a minute to breathe, but somehow it feels like I still don't accomplish enough. Okay. Once you've got that out of your head, we're going to go on to step one of this process, which is where we notice. And remember, noticing is about noticing the physical sensations of the feelings in your body. So for this question, you're going to close your eyes and really envision the situation that you described in the previous question. Get that like a mental image going in your mind. And that should bring back the feelings or the emotions that that situation brings up for you. Once you can feel those feelings in your body, I just want you to describe them. Where are they in your body? Are they big or small? Does the feeling have a color, a shape, a texture? Is it moving? Is it stationary? Does it have a taste? And these might sound like crazy questions if you've never stopped to notice your emotions, but I promise you, this is the coolest experience to just step back and watch what's happening in the cool machine that is your body. In the case of overwhelm, it might feel like your whole body is jittery. That's how it feels for me. My whole body has the jitters. And also, like a thick gray fog will fill my whole head that makes it hard to think. That's the physical manifestation of overwhelm. That's what I notice. Step two is to understand the useful message. So to do that, we're going to come back to the 5-step model, and we're simply going to create a model for this situation. It might look like your circumstance might be your plans for this upcoming weekend. And maybe the facts are the things you currently have in your calendar. There is hockey on Saturday. Then my son has to go to dance. Then I've told my mom I will go over for dinner. And then my son has his birthday party on Sunday. All those things are in my calendar. So those are very factual. I've planned to do these things. Your thought about that might be, there is so much to do. And this is where that question number one, where you just allow yourself to brain dump what's going on for you, is really helpful, because that's going to be like just so many thoughts, so many sentences that you have in your mind that are causing overwhelm. So we're just going to go back to that question number one and pick out the one sentence that feels like it creates that emotional trigger for us. In this case, it might be, there is so much to do. That thought is creating a feeling of overwhelm. And that the action being driven in this situation by the overwhelm might be, maybe this woman is not saying no to anything. She's just hustling to get it all done. And she's not present She's really in her own head about her to-do list and thinking about these things. As a result, she runs all weekend. At the end of the day, the result of those actions is that she keeps herself really busy on the inside and the outside. Okay, so now is when we get to really understand, okay, what is the helpful message? The thought was there is so much to do. We get to understand the molehill beneath that mountain. So let's look at how is this true? Well, it is true that there are a lot of demands on my time, a lot of people asking for things to happen, but it's not true that they all have to be done. I actually have the option of saying no to most of them. And question 4 is, how is this serving me or how is it not serving me? So that thought, there's so much to do. If we look at that model that we created, we can see the actions that it's driving. And those are useful and serving me in that I do get a lot done, but they're not serving me in that I'm exhausted and I'm less present with my loved ones. I'm probably not going to be all in and mentally present at my son's party on Sunday. And I maybe don't do some of those things as well as I could. So this last part is where we get to respond authentically. What is the result that you actually want in this situation? We know there's parts of this that are not serving you, not working how you want. What do you want? And maybe the result that you want is to slow down, be present, to be fully present for your child's party on Sunday. And so then the next question is, what action could you take to achieve that result? And I'm going to offer you a hint here. When you get to this question, your brain is probably going to want to be like, it is impossible. There is no way I can achieve that goal. Nope, it's impossible. Can't happen. And that is a lie. There is always something that you can do. It might not be a guaranteed thing to get you where you want to go, but there is always something that you can try if you want to. So if your brain tells you, I don't know what I can do, I want you to say, sorry, brain, that's not going to work today. We're going to take a best guess at this. What could we maybe try to get us this result? And so in the example of an overwhelming schedule, maybe this woman wants to cancel the dinner she has planned with her mom on Saturday night and use that to clean the house instead. So the house is ready for her son's party on Sunday. And maybe she also wants to scrap the plans she had to make a cake for her son and just buy a store-bought cake instead. Cross a couple things off the list so that she can be more present for the party. And then that's her action plan. Now, the beautiful thing about this is after this woman has processed in this way, she will understand what the need is, that hidden need beneath her stress. She will create authentic solutions. And once she does that, once she has that action plan for addressing the challenge, that overwhelm will whoosh, it will drop, it will dissipate. And so what I want you to take away, the big picture that if you take away nothing else from today's workshop, I would like you to take this away. Do listen to your feelings. They matter. They are giving you useful information. Honor the helpful message beneath those stressors. But do not take your feelings at face value. Do not assume that mountain, that exaggerated thought in your brain is true. It is not true. And if you respond to the stress and the frustration and the insecurity that is going on in your body without processing it, it's not going to get you where you want to go. It's going to cause problems. It's going to cause you to yell, which will erode your relationships. That insecurity might cause you to retreat and hide, which isn't really what you want to do either. So do not take the mountain at face value. Find the molehill. Okay? Those are the two key takeaways from today. Now, I have gotten a lot of questions in the past about how to take this process you're applying to yourself and help your children with it. I'm going to touch on this just briefly now because I want you to have something to work with. But this is also something that we can talk about in more depth, either on one of the Q&As or if you want to book a coffee chat. Excuse me. So the first and most important way that you can help your children apply this to regulate their own emotions is by changing the way you might be thinking about your child's behavior. Just like you are stressed because you probably have a legitimate need that's not being met, the same is true for your child. The child is not being bad, even if they're reacting, yelling, hitting, any of those big behaviors. You cannot believe that your child is doing that because they are bad, because they are a jerk. The mindset has to be, my child is behaving this way because there's some need beneath the emotion. And that is really, really important. When you think about your own model about your child, if you are believing something like, this is not okay, my child is being bad, you are going to feel anger. And when you feel anger, your actions are probably not going to be conducive to helping them apply this, right? But if you can change the belief system about those behaviors to, my child is struggling with something, there's a need beneath this emotion, then those thoughts will create feelings of compassion and empathy, which will make you much calmer and much more able to take the actions you need to take with your child. So that's really my top advice, is that shift in your own thinking. Now, the fun part that makes this all very tactical is around the strategies. What actions can you take with your child to help them apply this? And that really, really boils down to connection before correction. So when your child is just spun about something, their prefrontal cortex, the part of their brain that actually allows them to think about things rationally, to think about other people's needs, to solve problems, all of that critical thinking is offline. Their prefrontal cortex is down and out, and the emotional parts of their brain are in full drive. So the first thing we need to do is connect with them and help them calm. So that way their ability to think clearly can come back online. The way you can do that is like kind of a 4-step process. You can start by just naming their feeling. Like, hey, Johnny, it looks like you're feeling really sad. Are you? And often, like if your child is, 3 or 4, even like maybe like 2.5, like pretty early, they can often tell you if they are upset. They'll either say like, yes, I am, or no, I'm not. But when you do that, you're telling them, I see you, and you're giving them the words to express that. You're teaching them how to notice their own feelings. Then, just like you do a thought download where you journal all of your own thoughts about your stress, you can invite that story from them. You can ask them, what's going on? Why do you feel sad? And they might tell you, my little brother stole my toy and I'm really sad about that, or he broke my toy. If your child is verbal, they will be able to articulate at least parts of that. If your child is younger or just really upset and not able to be as verbal, you can also help them. You can offer what you're observing. It looks like you might be sad because the baby stole your toy and broke it. Is that why you're sad? And then that can help them get the story out. And at the end, you can kind of confirm what you've heard. Okay, I hear how you're feeling. I hear you're feeling sad, and I hear this is why. And then just validate the emotion. You don't have to validate the behaviors they took. Like if your son is sad because his baby brother broke his toy, and so he smashed his baby brother with another toy, you don't have to validate that. But you can validate the feeling of being sad about a broken toy. Like, yeah, I feel sad too sometimes. I remember once when I was a kid, my favorite toy got lost and I was so sad. And that alone, if all you do is get them to name how they're feeling, tell the story of why, and validate the feeling, they will probably feel much, much calmer already. And you will create a strong sense of connection with between you and the child. And that might be enough. That might be enough for them to just go on their way, and that's all they need to do. You may want to also add pieces that are more action oriented. Like if your child wants help solving the problem, you can ask them, do you want to work on this together? Do you want to create some solutions for how to fix this toy or how to protect this toy from being broken again? And if they say yes, you can brainstorm with them and come up with some ideas. Or if, little Johnny, when they were feeling so sad or angry, hit their baby brother, and there's something that they need to do to take responsibility for that, now that they're calm, is a great time to deal with that too. And you can invite them to say, or to help think about, is there anything that I need to make right? Anything I did while I was upset that I want to make right now that I'm calm? So hopefully that's helpful. If you have any other questions, hop on a coffee chat or a Q&A and we will cover those together. Okay, so before we end, the last sort of core content that I want to cover today is what makes this hard? What are the barriers you're likely to encounter as you go about authentic stress response in your own life? And what can you do about those things? So, barrier number one is loved ones who expect you to act in a certain way. So let's pretend, for example, that your mom has always kept her house spotless. And when she comes over to your house, she's kind of judgmental about like those applesauce splatters on your baseboard. And if you genuinely, if what is authentic for you is that you really don't care that much about cleaning, like time is short and you'll run the vacuum around once a week, but you're not going to scrub the baseboards. That's just not the most important thing. But then your mom comes over and she criticizes the baseboards. That might make it very hard for you to feel good living your truth. In that case, my advice to you is that it is okay for your mom to be disappointed. If she values different things than you and thinks differently than you, then she might be disappointed when you do what is authentic for you. And that's all right. Let her be wrong about what's best for you. You can even choose to look at her disapproval as a badge of honor. Like, yeah, my mom spent hours each week cleaning. And the fact that she disapproves with how much cleaning I'm willing to do means I'm doing it right because I didn't want to do it that way to begin with. And where possible, try to choose to be around people who do make you feel safe to be yourself. That's not always possible. And it's really good to just have the skill of not letting other people's opinions bother you. But it's also just really fun to surround yourself with people who make you feel good being yourself. Barrier number 2 is internalized shoulds. And this is what happens when other people's opinions, like your mom's opinions about cleaning, actually become internalized. And then you start shoulding on yourself. I really should do a better job cleaning. I really should make more money. I really should, be more involved in community service. Should, right? I really should exercise more. And even if people aren't around saying those things to you, you are saying them to yourself, which kind of becomes like an internal prison. And as long as you have those shoulds, it will also be very difficult for you to live authentically, live the way you actually want to, if it violates this unconscious should that you have. And everyone will have a slightly different set of shoulds. But in general, there's a few pretty common ones that women in Western society are offered and we have absorbed about ourselves. So you may have some of these. I should have a highly successful career or make a lot of money. I should be the primary caregiver. I should be physically attractive and thin. That is a big one. That is like the biggest should that most women carry. that really is very challenging, especially when you're coming into motherhood and your body doesn't align with that should, and it's not realistic. Another should is don't fail, don't quit. Those are bad. Don't do those. And be kind. Don't disappoint people, okay? What I want you to notice is that all of those are fiction. None of those have any sort of inherent moral value, and you get to choose. If you want to have a highly successful and high paid career and hire a nanny to help with the cooking and the cleaning and pick up the kids from school, that is totally available to you and totally okay. If you want to quit your job and be a stay-at-home mom because you've got enough income and you want to spend that time with your family, that is also beautiful. You get to choose. Barrier number 3 is not actually knowing what you want, right? Like when you get to that part of the exercise where you're like, what's the result I want here? And how can I get it? You might run into the problem where you genuinely don't even know what you want, who you are, what you value, what makes you happy. And I love this example or this analogy of a friend. If you have a friend who calls you regularly, but you never answer her calls and you never call her back, eventually she's going to stop calling, right? That's a little bit like if you've suppressed your own needs for long enough, that's a little bit the same. You're going to turn off that voice inside of you that's really good at telling you what you value and what you want. It's not going to whisper so loudly anymore. And you can kind of forget who you are. Not to mention that even if you're really good at identifying your own needs and values and honoring those, when you transition to motherhood, it throws everything on its head and you have to reevaluate everything. And so you might just be in a phase of transition where you genuinely don't know what's most important and you have to figure it out. That is totally okay. If for any of those reasons you find yourself not knowing what you want, give yourself permission to just take a best guess. What do I think that I want here? How do I think I might be able to achieve that? And expect that there'll be some trial and error involved. You might try, working more hours and hiring a nanny, and then realizing, oh wait, no, that still isn't what I want because I really miss my kids and I want to be there. And then maybe you're like, okay, let me try again. Let me try reducing my hours or taking a different job. That's just one example. But give yourself permission to not know and to take time to figure out what you want. Okay, that is the end of the core content. As you go about practicing, trying this worksheet, try it at least once on an example of any stressor in your own life. And then if you have any questions, anything you're stuck on, join us. Laura and I will be doing several Q&As. Sign up for one of those. The group format of the Q&A can be awesome because you get to hear other people's questions, which sometimes you have never even thought of yourself. And it certainly can be a lot easier to be like, oh yeah, I could see how she could do that differently. And when it's a little closer to you, it can be a little harder. So yeah, jump on a group Q&A or book a free coffee chat. Those are half an hour one-on-one calls with me where the whole time is just about delving into your situation. So the benefit there is we get a little more depth. And if you're someone who's a bit shy to speak in public, there's a little more privacy. So kind of choose your poison. Pick whichever form of support resonates with you. And sign up for one of those on the website if you'd like to. And just a reminder that as you go forth and do these things on your own, please do not tackle anything that has been very, very traumatic for you. Neglect, abuse, present or past. Do reach out to one of the resources on the worksheet to get support for those things. Now, now we're going to dig into what is like the supplementary part of this, the juicy part that you can watch if you want to, and if if it feels like fun for you, and if it feels useful for you. These are the 2 extra examples. So just like we did before, we're going to walk through the worksheet as it applies to your frustration when your kid ignores you and your frustration with your partner over their parenting approach. I really do want you to see also how universal this is. Exactly the same exercise, 3 very different situations, very, very useful anyways. Okay, so when the child ignores you. So question number 1 is describe the situation, free write about it. What happened? Why was that hard? Don't judge yourself. And so what you might write could be, I asked my kid 100 times to put the toys away for dinner, and they completely ignored me. That is so disrespectful. Question 2 is where we start to notice. We notice what that feeling of frustration feels like in our body. So you close your eyes, really envision that situation where your child was continuing to play after you called them for dinner, and just notice how your body feels. Maybe that frustration feels like explosive pressure bubbling in your chest. Maybe it even has a color. Maybe it's red. And maybe it's moving outward, like it's kind of bubbling outward, ready to explode. Maybe you even notice a little bit of it in your jaw, like maybe you're clenching your teeth. That is your smoke detector telling you there might be something here that's not working how you want. Step 2, we're going to understand. So we pull out this model. We break down the situation by the model. Your circumstance, the facts might be, I say to my child, put away your toys. And my child continues playing. Very factual. Everybody would view it the same way. You then have a thought about the circumstance, which is, if you look at the question 1, one of the thoughts you could pull from there would be, that is so disrespectful. That thought, that sentence is going to create a feeling of anger in your body, that bubbling in your chest, which might drive actions that look like repeating yourself more gruffly or eventually yelling. And the end result is that you are disrespectful. And so this is a really great example of how the anger is a very useful smoke detector to say something's not working, but it's not a useful tool for responding because it turns us into someone that we don't want to be. So question 3 asks us to really just interrogate that thought a little bit, that thought of that's so disrespectful. How is it true? How is it not true? Well, it is true that my child didn't respond to me when I talked to them, but it's not necessarily true that they're trying to respect me. Like that might not be what's driving their actions. Maybe they're just really enjoying their toys and they don't really want to put the toys down. Question 4 asks you to look at that thought and how it's serving you. And thinking that my child is so disrespectful is serving me in some ways, really. My yelling comes out, which makes me heard. That is a useful outcome in some ways because my child stops what he or she's doing, listens to me, and maybe even puts away their toys. But it is not serving me in the sense that I don't want the relationship with my child where he ignores me and then I yell. I want that relationship to look much different. So step number 3 of the authentic response process asks us to think about the result we want and how to get there. So maybe the result you want in this situation is that my child puts their toys away and comes for dinner, and that conversation happens in a mutually respectful way. What action could I take to achieve that result? The truth is, there's more than one way to do these things. So this is an example of what I could do, but maybe I could go down to my child's level when they don't respond and say, hey, why didn't you respond? And if they say, I'm having too much fun, maybe I offer 2 more minutes of playtime to accommodate that desire they have. But then I also explain that when you ignore me, I feel frustrated. Could you please acknowledge me next time? So my needs are voiced very respectfully, and my child's needs and interest is addressed as well. As a result, you understand your own need. And in this case, you get the good outcome of also understanding your child. You create an authentic solution, and that anger you're feeling will dissipate. This is a total side note, but it's really, really, really important anytime you're using this model on how to interact with others. Anytime you're interacting with another human from a place of anger and frustration, well, there legitimately is something important there for you. When what comes out, the energy that comes out is angry, we are far more likely to cause that other person to shut down or become defensive, which actually makes it much harder for us to get what we want. And so notice in this case how being able to respond to my child in a very calm and mutually respectful way is actually going to influence him to then be more likely to put away the toys after those 2 minutes and come and join me for dinner and help meet my need. So that ability to react with calmness and kind of understand where the other person's coming from is huge in getting the thing that you want. Okay, last example. Frustration with your partner's parenting. Question number 1, describe the situation. So my free write here might look like, I worked all day just to come home and find that the kids have been watching TV all afternoon. My partner couldn't even be bothered to get them out of the house. When we go to question number 2, this is where we start to notice the feeling, notice the physical experience in our body that is our smoke detector. And so in this case, when you close your eyes and imagine that moment when you walked in the door and you saw your kids plastered in front of the TV and you realized they were on their 12th episode of Paw Patrol, that feeling might be kind of like the last one, like explosive bubbling pressure in your chest. Maybe it's got a red color. Maybe it's bubbling and moving outward, ready to explode. Maybe your jaw was clenched. You'll often notice patterns, which is really, really nice. That often frustration will feel very similar to you each time you're frustrated. Overwhelm will feel very similar to you each time you're overwhelmed. Like for me, it's instant jitters and brain fog when I'm overwhelmed. And because it's the same all the time, I'm like, oh, I know exactly what that is. I'm overwhelmed. And it makes it much quicker to respond to. So notice those patterns. Okay. Question number 2, we're going to look at the 5 components. The circumstance might be the kids watched 3 hours of TV. Your thought might be, and again, this is from your thought download, the thought that triggers you might be, my partner couldn't be bothered to get them out of the house. And that thought might create a lot of anger. And the action that is driven by your anger might be an aggressive comment to your partner. Maybe you snap at your kids. Maybe you very abruptly turn off the TV. And then the end result is that you're not necessarily who you want to be in that situation either. Okay, so here's where we interrogate that thought. The thought was, my partner couldn't be bothered to get them out of the house. How is that true? Well, my partner did not take the kids out today, and it would actually have been better for the kids to be active. But it's not true that my partner could not be bothered. My partner actually finds it tough to get the kids out the door when what the kids want to do is watch TV. So how is this thought serving me? How is it not? Well, the thought of my partner can't be bothered to get the kids out of the house, it is serving me in that moment, or it did serve me because I told my partner what was wrong and I turned off the TV. So that marked a transition to something else. So there's some useful outcomes there. But it's not serving me in that the way I conveyed my message causes fights and damages those important relationships. So now is the part where you get to respond authentically. What is the result that you want in the situation? And maybe that result is that you and your partner align your views on screen time. So you're on the same page about what should happen on Saturday afternoons. What action could you take to achieve that result? Again, this could look a number of different ways, but maybe you decide it could look like waiting until the kids are in bed and you and your partner are both calm, then calmly expressing your views about screen time limits, asking your partner's thoughts and really holding space to hear and understand your partner, and then co-creating a family approach that blends both of your needs and interests. And I will say this is so interesting, right? Because we first started parenting, I was pretty sure I was right all the time. Like I took all the parenting courses, I am that person, and I read the books, and I thought I was right all the time. And my partner did it very, very differently. And over time, as I learned to express my views calmly, but also hold space to hear what he was thinking, each time we had those conversations, we slowly moved closer together. And it's a beautiful thing. And again, the end result for you is you understand your need, like you're upset because you really want your kids to be active. And so you understood your need there to address that. You understood your partner's need by having that conversation with them. You created an authentic solution so that things are more likely to go differently next time. And that will dissipate the anger because the smoke detector will go off knowing the issue has been addressed. All right, my friends, that is all for today. It has been such a pleasure to be here with you, and I truly hope that I will see you at either one of the Q&A sessions or on a free coffee chat. Grab those links on the Child Reach website. We'll talk to you soon.